Hello and welcome to the first state-run TV broadcast. I'm your host Kyle and I'll be taking you on today's journey as well as hopefully many more in the future. Before we get started, I thought that I'd just say a little bit about myself. I'm what you could call a libertarian, although I try not to pin any particular label on myself. I have sympathies across the ideological board, and you can always find me studying the most radical to the most conservative schools of thought. In general, though, I am a believer in individualism, private property, free speech, and liberty as it pertains to society as well as in the workplace. With that said, I think that a great first topic for today's show would be the topic of amending the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It seems like the hot talking point among those on both the authoritarian right and left is that the Constitution is outdated and doesn't cover modern issues such as hate speech, women's rights, terrorism, etc., etc., etc. Newspaper and magazine articles have covered the subject, and most recently it was discovered that a teacher in Arkansas was having her class revise the Bill of Rights in the era of terror. So I thought what I would do would try well, I thought what I would do would be actually to try to revise the Bill of Rights myself in a way that could make the supporters of the authoritarian right and left happy. I would try to make them more modern so they could fit better with the times. I've decided to comply with the instructions the teacher gave for her assignment in one regard. Obviously, I don't have a team or anything like that, but they require that the students become members of a task force hired out by the government to perform the revision, and that the task force present its findings to the government. So I'm going to simulate that I'm presenting those findings to you who are the government committee. Of course, in the modern era, we no longer need the consent of the government to make changes to the government, especially radical ones. No, the only thing that we need are a few self-appointed experts with PhD titles after their names, and it's all good. All right, so with that in mind, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. All right, so obviously we have the First Amendment to the Constitution in the new revised Bill of Rights. It reads, "The executive branch, through its various task forces and offices, shall issue all relevant guidelines relating to fair speech. Everyone shall have the right to say whatever they please, practice whatever faith they want, and petition whomever they desire. These actions must be in compliance with the guidelines issued by the executive branch and must not be offensive to anyone or discriminatory towards anything. Criminal penalties for noncompliance as well as offensive and discriminatory speech are to be established by the executive branch and its various task forces and offices. The Internal Security Apparatus shall be responsible for all criminal prosecution relating to noncompliance." So here, I felt that the revision to the first was important because it deals with hate speech and bullying. In our modern times, these are significant problems, and they're all caused by free speech. And that's why I gave the duty to the government of taking an active role in developing guidelines relating to what we can and cannot say in order to maintain social harmony and ensure domestic tranquility amongst all throughout society. And this is really what I fundamentally call the right to fair speech. The Second Amendment, this is pretty radical right here. "Every woman shall have the right to free reproductive care, including pregnancy termination services that are available 3 years after the birth of any child." It's pretty self-explanatory. The struggle for reproductive care rights has been ongoing for a long time, and I thought it was best to enshrine it in the new Bill of Rights and the vaunted spot of the Second Amendment. Now we're on to the Third Amendment. This is about jobs. All private property is available for use by the federal government and its relevant agencies, including the tax collecting authority and the Internal Security Apparatus. The federal government and its relevant agencies may take over any piece of private property at any time for any use and are not required to provide a reason or explanation. Also, the use of private property by the federal government and its relevant agencies may continue for an indefinite duration with no compensation to the owner. Furthermore, the federal government may sell private property which it has occupied or used or is currently using to anyone or any company they deem fit. The third, as I said, it's all about job creation. So say, for example, you have a developer who wants to build a luxury casino resort on lakefront property that's near a small town, but unfortunately, the owner of that property doesn't want to give it up. In the past, the developer would be required to go through a lengthy court battle to try and eminent domain the property, but he still might lose. However, now with this amendment, that developer can present his case to his buddies in Congress or to one of his friends in the many bureaucracies and have them seize that land immediately and then sell it to him for pennies on the dollar. The town, which struggled in the past, would soon find itself booming with all kinds of jobs as a result of the developer having the government use the Third Amendment. It's really a win-win for everyone. Even the person who used to own that land could probably land a job working at that casino, and he would still, while working, be able to enjoy the view that used to be exclusively his. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to remain secure from the threat of domestic as well as international terrorism, shall not be infringed. The federal government shall be tasked with protecting the safety of all citizens through an omnipresent internal security apparatus, which shall be tasked with the duty of monitoring all domestic and international communication and keeping tabs on anyone or anything of interest. The internal security apparatus shall also have at its employ both uniformed and plainclothes officers to carry out the mandate of the agency. These agents will be tasked with protecting the nation's vital infrastructure as well as schools and all public as well as private events. Along with the military and federal police, only the agents of the internal security apparatus may be armed or carry weapons. With this particular amendment, I felt that it was necessary to revise the Fourth in a way in order to address the real threat from terrorism that we all face in today's modern world. Giving us the right to be safe was very important, and handing the proper powers over to government to do it was even more important. I think that everyone would sleep better at night knowing that their Z's are under constant monitor. Remember, if you have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't be worried. Furthermore, I thought that I would address the problem of gun violence via the Fourth. The old Bill of Rights was responsible for so much carnage and destruction, and by limiting the use of weapons to government and government alone, I know that there is no limit to the safety that we can give society through that. So we're going to continue down the list with the Fifth Amendment. Again, it pertains primarily to terrorism and national security. The internal security apparatus shall have the duty to detain all persons of interest for any reason and for any duration of time. Those who are detained must answer all questions asked of them by the internal security apparatus and must answer them truthfully. The internal security apparatus shall have the power to use whatever means necessary to obtain an answer from a person of interest. The way that I see this revised Fifth Amendment being used is like this. The internal security apparatus brings in a jaywalker that they nabbed on the street because they thought not using the crosswalk was a little bit suspicious and warranted a little extra questioning. Common sense, who wouldn't think that? At first, the guy, he's completely uncooperative, only telling the officers that he crossed the street at the non-designated point in order to reach his destination a little bit quicker. However, using those powers, after a few pulled teeth and maybe a swim under a wet cloth, the real motive of his crime comes to surface. Infrastructure destruction. So, as you can see through the revised Fifth Amendment, the internal security apparatus would be able to protect the homeland and get dangerous subversives like this guy off the street. So now we come to the Sixth Amendment, which deals with criminal trials. How do we handle them in our society? Well, let's go ahead and read it. All criminal trials shall take place in private, so as not to disturb the domestic tranquility of society. The sentence of all criminal trials shall be determined in advance by the internal security apparatus and or tax collecting authority, the prosecution, and the judge. There is no need to inform the accused of any charges or evidence, only to inform them of a guilty or innocent verdict. The trials may last as long as required by the internal security apparatus and or tax collecting authority, the prosecution, and the judge deem necessary. Bail may never be set in cases relating to national security and or terrorism. And what I tried to do here was I tried to deal with those emotional trials that we see in our society quite frequently, unfortunately. Because public trials can cause a lot of problems and lead to unnecessary passion among the populace and distract them from high culture events such as sports and celebrity affairs. So that's why I thought to revamp the Sixth Amendment in order to keep harmful criminal trials from affecting society. Also, I thought that by preventing bail in terrorism and national security cases, we could keep individuals such as the jaywalker, i.e. the infrastructure destroyer, from fleeing from the fist of justice. And we're on to the Seventh Amendment. Now, before I read this one, it requires a little bit of explanation. So we're going to have a long explanation section, even though it's quite short, but it's very complex. All federal officers, regardless of department, shall be immune from civil and criminal prosecutions for actions taken towards civilians and their property and other lower-ranking federal officials and their property. So here's what this means. Frivolous lawsuits against government were really a problem, and I guess what would be the old America with this revised Bill of Rights, especially when they related to quote-unquote violations of rights. You see these cases where people are suing police departments for millions of dollars. And so I thought to correct that. In my line of thinking, the seventh would really be used to tie together many of the other amendments and provide protections for officers during investigations. Come up with a little example here. We have Kathy, who's a secretary with some federal department and the government. She's on her lunch at the mall, and she can't stop thinking about her kids who keep on nagging her to buy some new video game system. Well, unfortunately for Kathy, she doesn't really have much money, and she's not that high ranking yet, so she doesn't earn a lot either. So those thoughts are really, they're secondary to her. However, when it comes to her duty is first and foremost in her mind. Because after she finishes lunch and is walking back to the office, she spots a suspicious vehicle on the street that has a snake sticker on the back of it. And she remembers from her anti-extremism training, which is mandatory, that the snake is a symbol of vicious extremists, and she decides to investigate the car a little bit further. So she looks all around it, she looks through the windows and stuff, and but after looking in the back, she sees that very video game system that her kids have been nagging her about. Now, of course, she's not going to go and steal that video game system. No. She's not going to do that. But what she does notice is something peculiar about it. It has a 500 gigabyte built-in hard drive. This could be very, very important for an investigation. And she decides that she's going to smash the window with her elbow, and she's going to take the video game system out of the car and bring it back to the office for analysis. Actually, no, never mind. She's just going to take it home for some self-analysis to try to prove herself at the office and try to get that big promotion. While she's doing this, however, the owner of the vehicle and the game system spots her. And, obviously when someone's breaking into your car and you spot him, he's kind of freaked out. So he calls the federal police. The police show up and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" And Kathy says, she flips out her badge, shows it right to the police, and she says, "National Security, that's what's going on." And really what that does is it resolves the situation. No harm, no foul. And really a possible security risk is taken down here. So it's a great win. And we're almost to the end of the list here. We're on to the 8th Amendment. I thought here we would address the issue of robot rights, essentially, is what I'm trying to do here. The founders could have never foreseen the rise of drones or the necessity to use them. So without further ado, here's the 8th. For persons of interest who are inaccessible by the Internal Security Apparatus for reasons of being located in a distant land, sentences may still be determined by a private court consisting of the Internal Security Apparatus and or tax collecting authority, the prosecution, and a judge. These sentences may in turn be carried out by a drone or other robotic device. And along with dealing with the topic of drones, it also allows for persons of interest to be dealt with even though they may have tried to escape from the wings of justice of society. The 9th Amendment. All citizens shall have the duty to purchase and maintain health insurance, car insurance, renter and property insurance, environmental protection insurance, and life insurance through exchanges established by the tax collecting authority. Failure of any citizen to uphold their duties shall result in criminal charges and prosecution as determined by the tax collecting authority. Number 9 tackles the issue of keeping people safe, but not from terrorism. Instead, it deals with accidents, another problem in society. And what we're looking to do is build a massive insurance bubble around the country as a whole. And through that, we're able to ensure that we'll have a happier, healthier, and better society. Furthermore, on the issue of environmental protection society, it will actually help offset any carbon footprint that individual citizens produce. And last but not least, the 10th Amendment. The federal government and the executive branch assume any and all powers not specifically spelled out in the Constitution or Bill of Rights of the United States of America. This is really about streamlining things. During our recent government shutdown debacle, we were all at the mercy of Congress to decide when the country would be open for business again. Well, under this revised Bill of Rights, we wouldn't have to waste our time with debates or petty squabbles. We could get things done. The executive branch would simply just issue an order, and every situation would be cleared up. All right, that wraps up the presentation on the Bill of Rights. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And obviously it's all satire, but I think it touches on many realities that we are facing as a society and a culture. And even if you don't believe so, I hope that it gave you something to think about. But until next time, thank you for watching.